Hi, good morning, and welcome to our meditation. Today is the 12th of August. I would like to meditate with you in the message that was actually preached on the 11th of August 2024 here in the Église Baptiste de la Côte Basque, the Baptist Basque Coast Church. Let's read then in Matthew chapter 5, verse 7. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Let's talk about being merciful. And the word used here is elemon. It means merciful, full of compassion, a compassionate person. A very nice, wonderful, beautiful text to understand what it is to be a merciful person is to Hebrews chapter 2, verse 17. For this reason, he had to be made like them, fully human in every way, in order that he might become a merciful and faithful high priest in service to God, and that he might make atonement for the sins of the people. And here we find the same word, to be merciful, as we found in Matthew chapter 5. So what happened here? What happened here that in this amazing letter, we don't know who wrote this letter, but this letter was written to show that Jesus was superior. He is superior to the Jewish religion. The Jewish religion here in Hebrews is just a shadow. Jesus is the reality. Jesus became man, says this text. He was made like into his brethren in all things. He was made just like them. So this text is talking about the incarnation of the Son of God. It is a mystery, and it is at the very foundation of the Christian faith. It means that if you remove the incarnation of Christ from your faith, you will be left with only an empty religion. I mean, religion compared to the gospel is empty anyway. But if in this Christian religion that you've heard about, uh, um, if in that religion there is no incarnation of the Son of God, that's not Christianity. It can't be, because it is at the center of the Christian faith. The God's plan without the incarnation is not complete. So it may shock lots of people when they hear about Jesus being the Son of God, but it doesn't matter, because that's what the gospel is about. It's about God becoming man to come to help me. As someone said, if God wanted to, if you wanted to help uh, ants, you have to become like them. You are too big to try to help little insects in their daily lives. You cannot help them. God became small. He became a man to come here and to rescue us from sin and death. It may shock the world, but that's what the gospel is. The text also says that he became like any human being in order to become a merciful high priest, a high priest filled with mercy. And he is going to demonstrate that mercy as he walks with the people here. And even now, because he lives forevermore, he's helping us as a merciful high priest. There is an event in the life of Jesus on earth that is going to help us to understand that. And it was described by John in his gospel in the chapter 13. The text says that as his hour was approaching to die, Jesus decided to show his love to his disciples, not just by saying, I love you, but he washed their feet. We understand that a person who was going to, a slave that was humiliated, was a slave that took place at the entrance of the house to wash people's feet. All those people who came to a wedding, to a feast, they had their feet washed by that slave that was sitting at the entrance of the house. But here, it's not a slave, it is the Son of God that is washing their feet. We are going to come back at the end of this meditation to this amazing story in John chapter 13. But I would like to talk about the Psalm 23 that shows as well that God is a merciful God. Because sometimes we go through the valley of the shadow of death. And in the Psalm 23, it's written that the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. So what is the shepherd is going to do? He makes me lie down in green pastures. He looks after me. He leads me beside quiet waters. I live here in the Basque country, and the Basque country is known here in France and also in Spain as a country for sheep. There are lots of sheep here, and we eat this delicious lamb's cheese, as they call it here in this area. So these little animals, they are very, very fragile, as you say. Every summer they take them up to the Pyrenees because it can be very hot here, and they don't like it. So they take the animals to the mountains or to the higher grounds, but they cannot go to the mountains on their own. We call it in French la transhumance. They cannot go on their own for 2 or 3 months. They need guiders. They need the shepherds to take them up to the mountains. David is saying that the Lord leads me beside the quiet waters, and because I was walking the valley of the shadow of death, he restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness. Before we couldn't walk in God's righteousness, but now we can, because, as Paul says, Jesus has become for us God's righteousness. So he is our righteousness. So we can walk in him. Like a shepherd, he feeds his flock. He gathers the lambs in his arms and carries them in his bosom. He leads the weak ones and nurses them. Isaiah chapter 40, verse 11. This is a text of consolation for those people who are coming back from captivity. They cannot walk. So God is taking them, is actually gathering them in his arms, is carrying them. You know the story of the 4 steps on the sand, and that person who was walking with God, God was walking with him. But then one day he's feeling as if he's going through the valley of the shadow of death, and he sees only two steps before he used to see 4. And he's probably going to say, God, you have abandoned me. Maybe I'm too sinful. But God is going to tell that person, I am carrying you. And the steps you are seeing are mine. So that's the merciful high priest. He's carrying us when we cannot walk. Most of the time we cannot walk. Let's go back to John chapter 13. In verse 8, John is using a word that means to wash parts of the body. Peter said to him, you shall never wash my feet. Jesus answered him, unless I wash you, you have no part with me. And then in verse 10, John is going to use a second word for washing someone, bathing someone. Jesus said to him, he who is bathed needs only to wash his feet, and he's completely clean. You are clean, but not all. So what does it mean? The verb to be the word bathed here, the verb bathed here, is in the past. You have been bathed, and it means your whole body has been bathed. But from time to time, when you walk in the valley of the shadow of death, you need Jesus to wash your feet, to wash your ears, to wash your mouth, your tongue, your hands. It's a daily work of a high priest that is filled with mercy. And he's helping us daily. We can, apart from him, we can do nothing. So what's going to happen to you when you are in contact with this high priest full of mercy? You are going to be just like him. So the compassion of Jesus is going to be in you. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 31 and 32 says, let all bitterness, wrath, anger, clamor, slander, and all malice be put away from you. Be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, just as God in Christ has forgiven you. Be kind to one another. Be tender-hearted. Be forgiving one another. This is a person, a disciple of Christ, who is full of mercy, full of compassion, just like Jesus. And Paul says, just as God in Christ has forgiven you, you should forgive as well. And in John chapter 13, verse 12, Jesus is going to say this. First is John writing, and then Jesus is going to speak. After he had washed their feet and had taken his garments, he sat down again and said to them, "Do you know what I have done to you?" And it's a question that we should that Jesus is still asking us today. Do you know what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you say, well, for so I am. If I then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example that you should do as I have done to you. Verily, verily, I say to you, the servant is not greater than his Lord. So you also should wash one another's feet. That's the message for us today. To be compassionate, to be merciful, like Jesus is. Jesus is in me. Jesus is in you. And Jesus wants to be merciful through you. God bless you.